Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about max effort work and why it is beneficial when you are doing concurrent style periodization. Because this is something that has come up, and I've had people say things who are watching my current training, and they say, Jason, you're not getting a training effect from that. You don't get stronger from hitting maxes on these different lifts coming through once a week. And the truth is you actually do. And it's not just about the maxes on those lifts, but even the maxes that you hit on the conjugate style training that I'm doing, where you're rotating through max effort exercises. And so in here, I've just thrown up some examples of some of my training maxes, and then some of my, even my back off triples and other things using assistance movements or even the primary exercises. Because a lot of times I even come through on my max effort days, and if I hit a training max on something that's not my conventional exercise as a raw lifter, I sometimes do back off work on the primary exercises, right? So if I'm doing a box squat for the squat day, I might do some back off triples with a fairly heavy weight with the back squat, right? Same thing on the bench press. If I'm doing floor press or the standing press or whatever for the max, I will do back off work on the other stuff later in the day. So the point is, people will say things like, well, you're not really getting stronger from that. And the thing is, you actually are. People have this strange idea that ramping up to a max has no training effect. But it does. In fact, even hitting singles, when you start getting above around 85%, every single that you hit, especially if you are hitting it with maximum exertion, is actually hitting upper threshold fibers. In other words, you're getting a training effect from that. So what do I mean as an example? I'll use kilos instead of pounds. We'll make this easy. If your 1 rep max is 100 kilos and you start doing singles ramping up and you go 185 for a single, 90 kilos for a single, 95 for a single, then you hit 100 and that's your max. All 4 of those reps got a training effect. Especially starting with the 85, if you exploded with it as hard as you would on a max, you are getting a training effect. There is some stimulus. The argument is what? That it's not giving you as much total training effect as if you had done a real set. Meaning a 5 rep set taken to within 1 rep of failure has multiple reps that got you an actual training effect. So in theory, from a hypertrophy perspective, you are getting a better effect from that than you do from those individual singles, no doubt about that. But the point we run into with concurrent periodization is that you do your more volume-oriented work, or in my case, like dynamic effort days right now, on a separate day, and you have a separate recovery curve, because you won't be able to replicate those sort of training loads on the higher volume days as often as you come in and do the heavy work. So what you find is that you actually can get away with more work. You can't come in and do limit sets with high volumes multiple times a week. You can't get as much total training intensity. You can't do it, or as much training load if you try to do that. That's the reason concurrent periodization exists. So unless you think that you're going to honestly come in and do another really high rep, high volume day, which you're going to find you're not going to be able to do as much as if you only did it once a week, it's not going to work. So there's a reason we're staggering workloads. But you do need to understand you are getting a training effect from that heavy work. And what people need to remember is that you are also doing assistance and accessory work also, which is building muscle, which is going to build strength. But here's the point we come to. Yes, we are testing maxes when we are doing these singles, right? We're not doing these for a primary training effect. We are assessing to see where our strength is with a smaller training effect than we would get on our normal work sets. Because again, you're just doing 1 rep, right? You're doing 1 rep. And it's oftentimes a slightly detrained lift. Because you haven't hit a max on it in several weeks usually. But if you've done back off work, it's not fully detrained. But it's letting you see where your strength is on these different lifts. And what you should be seeing on all these lifts is a general upward trend. The other thing that people need to understand, there is a motor unit learning aspect to this. People say, well, what do you mean? So you know that lifting a heavy weight is, number one, a skill, right? It is a skill that has to be learned. I can take a lifter and we can get him big and strong doing nothing but 8 to 10 rep sets on his squats and his bench and, you know, his rows and all this stuff, right? We can get strong working in the 8 to 10 rep range. We can put on a fair amount of muscle in the 8 to 10 rep range on these big exercises. I don't think anyone's in denial of that, are they, right? Everyone agrees doing pretty heavy sets of 10 on the squat and the bench press and the row will put muscle on you. I don't think anyone disagrees with that, especially if there's progressive overload there and it's programmed effectively. Sure, you can. Are you going to be good at maximum strength? No. You will have the strength potential because you'll have the hypertrophy. You're going to get decent sized quads and glutes and pecs and triceps and lats and all that stuff from doing this volume. But in order to hit singles, to actually exert maximum force, you're actually going to have to learn to do so. You're going to have to learn how to do so, which means you're going to actually have to come in and practice doing reps and singles that are over 90%. Because you have to do some training over 90% to learn how to exert yourself with maximum force, right? It's a requirement. Otherwise, you're not going to be as strong as you could be. So yeah, you do gain strength from coming in and doing singles at over 90%. You do gain strength from it in the sense of you learn how to exert yourself maximally against a heavy weight. It is a learned skill, and you do have to get some practice work in. So max effort days do matter for that because you have to learn how to do that. You can't just come in and do nothing but dynamic work and repetition methods and develop maximum strength. You can get really big, and you can develop a lot of general strength doing that. You can even develop decent speed strength. But you're not going to develop max strength unless you do max effort work. You're going to have to practice it. All right, that's number one. Number two, if you're rotating through different max effort lifts, what are you doing? You're also practicing oftentimes awkward movements. You're practicing bar paths that are a bit outside of your normal main exercise. So, for example, we'll take squatting. Perfect example. If you are doing some box squatting, that has a different bar path than your normal back squat. If you're doing some safety bar squats, that has a different motor pattern and a bar path than your normal squat. You're learning to exert yourself maximally also when you slip out of your groove. You're learning to exert yourself maximally when you slip out of your groove because you are also learning other bar paths. And that's one of the things that people need to look at and understand is beneficial. It's useful to you to learn at least 3 different basic bar paths for every lift that you might want to actually hit real maxes on one day once you're not a novice, once you've developed a real strength base. Right? I'm not talking about a novice. I'm talking about once your bench is past 300. I'm talking about once your deadlift's past 500. Right? You can actually lift something. Doesn't mean you're elite, but you can lift something. We know that a lack of exercise variation in advanced lifters leads to higher injury rates. Why? Well, number one, there's the overuse component, right? There's the overuse component. But number two, it's that what happens when they slip out of their bar path. That's the one downside to Bulgarian style training. Sometimes you get really good at your one bar path, but if you slip out of your groove, you don't always know how to handle it. When you're doing some of this max effort work with other lifts, you're learning other bar paths that take the bar through a different path. You're learning how to push through those bar paths also. Well, why does that matter? Well, that matters because if you do get out of your groove on a true max, when you go to hit a serious real max on the squat or the bench press, it's possible for you to get out of your groove. It's possible for you to get out of your textbook form. Now, you've had to learn how to be stronger at these alternative bar paths to where you're slipped slightly out. You've learned how to restabilize yourself and catch the weight and push through. All right, that has its own training mechanism that will help you on a true max. When you do have to hit a really big lift, what's going to happen if something goes wrong in the lift? You'll miss it sometimes. Not only a safety issue, an injury risk issue, but what about completing the lift? Well, if you've learned how to do a couple other bar paths and you're strong at just a couple of different variations that are close, you're also generally going to be strong at that. So if something does slip out of your groove and something does go wrong, you're increasing the odds that you're going to have the strength to actually follow through on a non-perfect lift. In other words, if you can handle both the box squat and the safety bar squat for maxes, If you happen to unfortunately slip out of your groove on the squat, there's a good chance you might slip into a bar path that you do know how to exert maximum force through still. It can help you. So for the advanced lifter, there is merit to this sort of training. There are other programming benefits to some of it, and that's more than I can really cover here. But people need to understand there's a method to this. There's a reason behind this. It's not just nonsense. It's not that, oh, you're just coming in and hitting maxes on those days and you're getting no training effect. No, you are getting a training effect, and there are a host of benefits, and you're still doing assistance and accessory movements to build muscle afterwards in those already fatigued muscles, right? You're still doing other work on top of it on those days. So it's still a whole training protocol. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.